Thank you so much for staying with us right here on PM News. Now, South Africa's defeat in their home series against England has pushed them off the top of the ICC Test Rankings. India are currently at number 1 with Australia in second place. Now, even if they beat England in the 4th Test in Centurion, the Proteas still won't be able to improve on their current 3rd position. For more on the Proteas' fall from grace in the Sunfall Test Series, we are now joined in studio by SABC sports commentator and analyst Sikyolelwa Sikolele. And on the line from the Western Cape is former Proteas fast bowler Monde Zondeki, who will also be chatting to us. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Pearl, and good afternoon, rather, and good afternoon to you, Monde.
Yeah, you too, right? Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for having me.
Sports Jack, I'm going to start with you. Allow me to take things a little back to the series in India, where we literally recorded the first overseas loss in 9 years and 2 defeats in about under 3 days. What were your observations, and do you think that was an omen of things to come in this current test? Because in the beginning, after that India tour, a lot of people were blaming the conditions, saying they weren't great, but now at home there's nothing to blame but our performance.
Well, Paul, you have to go as far as Bangladesh. You know, South Africa, the test side didn't register a win there, even though the second test match was rained out. But yes, you're quite right. Going into India, there were some talks around the pitches and them being underprepared, some being overprepared. But as a test cricketer, you come across those situations and you just have to deal with them. And coming back home, South Africa would have probably been buoyed by playing in familiar conditions at home. We didn't see that in Durban, and we saw some sort of fight back in Cape Town, even though the pitch suited both batting attacks. And coming into Johannesburg, South Africa probably would have backed themselves to register a win, and a win they haven't had in over a year now in Test cricket. So there's a lot of concern around that Test squad, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Monde, so clearly we seem to have been, have come in on a back foot going into this test. I mean, just looking at our performances in Bangladesh as well as India, what were your expectations for this test, and what were your observations as far as the bowling and the batting was concerned?
Well, I think firstly there was a lot of injuries coming into this series in terms of our bowling. If you look at Joe Taylor and Vernon Philander, who are pretty much our forefront of our attack, were both out. So I think experience plays a big part in Test match cricket, and we lack that. Only Monet Moko has been a guy who's been around for a while. And also, our team is in transition. We've lost a lot of over the last couple of years, year or two, sorry. We've lost between Graham Smith, Jacques Callis, Mark Boucher, and a couple of guys very, very experienced. So we are in transition. I think people have to understand that you have to rebuild from starting. So we are in a process of rebuilding and starting a new team pretty much. But I didn't think that we would lose to England 2-0, to be honest, coming into it. But I think that we've got a lot of talent, natural talent, homegrown talent, and our future is good. But currently, we've got a lot of young guys who are trying to make their way in the team.
Okay, before I move on to my next question, Skelele, I believe you have something to add on to what Monde has just said.
Yeah, just to add on to what you've said, Monde, and I know you'll probably agree to me to some extent, is that Cricket South Africa knew that this was going to happen at some point. They knew that the likes of Graham Smith, Elvira Peterson, Mark Boucher, Jacques Callis would come to an end, and that's what happened. Did they prepare themselves? Certainly, if you look at the players that are playing now, Stian van Zyl and Themba Bavuma are players who were doing well at the time at Sunfall Series. But having given that opportunity, starting with Stian van Zyl, which is what I observed with that test match at the Wanderers, was that some deliveries he was prodding at, and he looked uncertain. That's what happens when you're playing for your role in the team. And Themba Bavuma, fortunately for him, did register a century in Cape Town, which has warranted him now selection for the next couple of games, even though there's one test match left in the summer in South Africa. But in the whole squad, there's a bit of uncertainty. There are players who are not sure of their roles. There are players who are riding on certain test tons that they've scored a year or two back, so, and there was a perfect opportunity yesterday for Faf du Plessis to take the game and, show some sort of responsibility, especially coming from a senior player like him to bat with the tail, register maybe 70-80 yard runs with the tail, which is what we didn't see. Instead, he occupied the crease, and that's where South Africa found themselves under pressure at the back end of the series, at the back end of the match.
It's so interesting that you say that, because former captain Graeme Smith has also not been shy about his views. He's spoken about the senior players in the team that aren't really stepping up. He's criticised the management for the very points that you've just mentioned. But how do we pick ourselves up, and how do we move on from here as the Proteas? Where is the Protea fire that we have been preaching about? Monde?
Well, I think, number one, you got to understand that, as I said before, there's a transition. You can't stay the best forever. For example, like Australia went through a transition when they were dominating for a lot of years, and then when they lost the Ricky Ponting and the Shane Warnes and the Glenn McGraths, they went through a transition where they weren't that good anymore, and they had to rebuild that process. So it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and I think that's what we're going through right now. We've got, as I said before, a lot of talent, a lot of very good players, but because of experience, and those guys are still trying to find their feet in international cricket, which is not an easy place to find your feet at. It's going to take time for us to be back at the top again. So it's a process. Talent-wise, we're not lacking. It's just experience where we're lacking. And, your best players have to perform. If IB de Villiers or Hashim Ahmed doesn't score runs, and they didn't score runs in this test match either. So it's one of those things. I just didn't think that England are more experienced than us. They've got a much more balanced team than we do, and we are lacking in certain places. But I think in time we'll get back to where we were, or where we are right now. Is obviously a place where we don't have a lot of experience, but we have the talent. But we'll get there eventually. It's just a process, as I've been saying again. It's a process. I think people have to be patient, and you can't expect us to be the best forever. It's going to take time to get back to where we were.
Sports Shock, let me come back to you. Now, did the change in captaincy perhaps reflect the transition or the problems that may be underlying in the team as well as the management? Do you think it added to the instability of the team? Or
that's the word I was going to use, instability. To change a captain during a test series playing against England is something that will cause a lot of uncertainty in the test squad. And if you look at the younger players, a player like Kagiso Rabada, Tema Bavuma himself, Stian van Zyl, they would also be, a bit shocked when such things happen. But to answer your question again about the Protea fire, I think there's a lot we need to look at that semi-final that happened in the World Cup. A lot of uncertainty at the moment, but since that World Cup semi-final, things have really gone down south for South Africa in terms of that test squad, and they've been holding on to that number one ranked team for quite a while now, and for it to happen against England, it kind of hurts.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I do have to cut this interview rather short. Thank you so much for chatting to me about the Protea fire, or the lack thereof, that has been displayed in this past test series against England.